So this is sort of a follow-up to the last video about Bryan Kohberger and his GTL tablet that he uses to communicate with others, perhaps his lawyer, who knows, from the Latah County Jail. News Nation reporter Ashley Banfield followed up. She actually contacted Latah County Jail authorities and did confirm via her show last night, Thursday, February 16th, the inmates do in fact have these tablets that we talked about.
Question that been milling about, just twisting it around up there, and that is, how often does Ann Taylor meet with Bryan Kohberger? How does she communicate with him? It turns out that she uses the same system that he uses to communicate with his family and his friends and his fans. Okay, so it's a system that anybody can access, even you and me. We can all creep on the system too, and we can see in real time whether Bryan Kohberger is currently chatting with somebody. And there are so many other fascinating little details about the prison communication system that's real new since COVID. We thought they were a secret. Turns out they're not. So after the break, I'm going to share the whole thing with you, and also what we have learned about Bryan Kohberger by using it.
The tablet privileges run from 7 a.m. to 11 p.m.
5 months. That's a long time. But what's happening in that time is that Bryan Kohberger and his attorney are going to be doing a lot of conferring. So how is that happening, right? Because if you knew this, Ann Taylor is located in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, and Bryan Kohberger is in jail in Moscow, Idaho, and there are 84 miles in between them. And if you drive that, it's about an hour and a half. It's like, that's a fair bit of driving. It's 3 hours every time you want to go and talk to your client, right? And those are billable hours, right? If you're in the car as a lawyer, those are billable hours. You got to commute to your client. So it turns out there's some pretty cool technology where she could be meeting with him pretty virtually. COVID was really big on advancing this and making it ubiquitous. But our team did some digging and we discovered this very interesting communication privilege that is now part of Bryan Kohberger's life. It is a tablet that he gets to have in his cell, and he can communicate with his lawyer, he can communicate with his friends, his family, his fans, anybody who he accepts as part of his contact list. It's all through an app called Getting Out. That's kind of aptly named, right? Getting Out, because you're in. But they get to have these in a lot of state prisons and jails. The deputy at the Latah County Jail that we spoke with told us that each inmate gets to use the tablet between 7 a.m. and ready? 11 p.m. Basically the entire day.
So let's talk about that and Bryan's $200 per hour attorney and how it's making some people go a little crazy. And the fact that Bryan's attorney, Ann Taylor, has no conflicts of interest in representing him, according to a meeting with a judge. And of course, I've always got to give the superstars on Reddit all of their stars, all of their credit, because the Redditors on a lot of these threads, and of course the Facebook groups too, people are finding out more and more stuff and using our collective experiences, just like I talked about my prison ministry experience, literally holding one of those GTL tablets last week. All of that collective experience helps us figure out what's going on. I'll show you some fair use snippets, but if you want to watch Ashley's entire show on News Nation, I've placed all the links below. Ashley spoke of her team confirming with Latah County Jail officials that, yes, these GTL tablets are the ones that inmates have. Now, we can't, of course, see everything that Bryan is doing, but I do check periodically, since I'm one of his connections, to see when his green light goes on, meaning he could be doing anything on the tablet.
7 a.m. all the way through to 11 p.m. You can make calls, texts, emails, send videos, photos. You can even get on FaceTime. But again, they have to approve you and accept you as their contact. And once you have been accepted, you can actually see whether he's using it. Like, you can kind of track him in real time, which is interesting. You can't see who he's talking to. You can just see that he is talking.
I don't know for sure if Bryan's messaging privileges are in action, if he's literally allowed to speak with other people besides his attorney, like family and friends or even fangirls. We'd have to see the proof. And that's where jails do get really protective If a person, for example, was video visiting or chatting with Chris Watts or something, there would be a long drawn out process for a person to be approved, and you can't just have anyone on the screen you want. It's not just like FaceTiming your sister and everyone can just jump around. There has to be certain confirmation. You can't go taking screenshots and recording and all this stuff. So even if Bryan Kohberger is speaking with someone besides his attorney, I'm not sure if that information will get leaked to Reddit or Facebook or something if that person doesn't want to lose their privileges.
I want to bring in somebody who has firsthand knowledge of how these tablets work. Ryan Moser was released from a Florida prison just 6 weeks ago after doing 8 years for a property crime. And during his time there, he became a journalist with over 100 publications while in prison. And so Ryan knows a fair bit about the system. Ryan, thank you for joining me to navigate this. Some people get very angry when they hear that an inmate gets to have a tablet, especially from 7 a.m. to 11 p.m. But should they?
Well, thank you for having me, Ashley. I think there's a misconception about the tablets inside prison. First of all, there is no internet access. So in the case of Bryan, where folks are reasonably upset that he could be participating in chat rooms, getting onto Facebook, trying to raise money for his case, those are unfounded rumors. He has no ability to do that. And I think that it overshadows the positive things that men and women who are incarcerated are using the tablets for, things like educational purposes and especially communication with family, which was a very big thing for myself. So I know personally how much that helped me to be able to email and send videograms or receive pictures of my family.
So it's also expensive. Like, it's not a free service. You have to pay for the amount of time you spend on that tablet, right? What kind of money are we talking about? And is it come from the commissary? It's either like, candy bars or tablet use?
Unfortunately, you do often have to choose between one or the other. It could be a family member that supports you. I read recently that 1 in 3 family members of incarcerated people have went into debt because of communication with their loved ones. Now, some states have taken the steps to provide free phone calls, but not everybody has a landline. So there's these little idiosyncrasies about communicating with people outside of prison that the average person doesn't know about. Tablets make this communication easier. There's been many times where I could email somebody, a loved one, and they'd have it within a few minutes. But it does cost money, and it costs my family thousands of dollars while I was incarcerated, and these companies make millions of dollars every year off of these services.
It's fascinating. And so you could also have these long conferences with your attorney as well. So I'm assuming that that's a good use of the tablet to have, meetings with your lawyer, because the lawyer won't have to drive 84 miles like, Ann Taylor would have to do a 3-hour round trip in order to have a meeting with Bryan Kohberger. How often are they used for, meetings with lawyers? And then bigger question, all that information, is that all tracked? It's all listened to? It's not private?
It is not private whatsoever. There's a third party in every state that will be in charge of monitoring the emails, phone calls, video conferencing. And if somebody violates the rules of the administration of that facility, they will have visits terminated, they will have restrictions put in place, and actually have the tablet taken from them. But in the case of lawyer-client privilege, I believe that tablet is a very good thing, because oftentimes it takes months to get into court and be able to see an attorney, or they have to drive long distances to come see you. So I think it's a matter of convenience.
Yeah. It's the same as the phone too. All bets are off if you're talking to your friend or your family and you're saying things on the phone. It's all recorded. But if you're talking to your attorney, that is privileged. It's just that I have seen that screw up before. I think it was in the Lori Vallow case where I saw privileged conversation accidentally on a tablet may have gotten out to some eyes and ears. So I think they're still working out some of the bugs in that.
Now, of course, jail officials are going to know what the heck Bryan Kohberger is doing, because if he is messaging someone, if he's having conversations with his mom or dad or sisters, of course that could be vital evidence. We've seen plenty cases where back in the day, people didn't realize their jail phone conversations were being recorded. We saw the way Casey Anthony reacted with her parents. We've seen some behind the scenes stuff that could later show up in court and maybe put the defendant in a really bad light. But basically, if Bryan has all the standard privileges of a regular inmate with one of these GTL tablets, he could potentially video visit with lawyer, family, approved visitors. He could potentially send messages, listen to music. If it's anything like my local county jail, he can access the Bible Gateway app. He really should be doing that right about now. Just other generic things. That's only if the tablet isn't, quote, jailbroken. Ashley Banfield spoke with a guy, as you'll see in the snippet coming up, who was an inmate, and he actually became a journalist along the way. So he has insider knowledge too of how these tablets actually work. I'm sure lawyers love them because it really saves them time in visiting with their clients. But this guy said that if the tablet was, quote, jailbroken, that means they could kind of go off, not just online on the intranet, the safe little bubble where inmates are allowed to visit certain specified apps or messaging or video visits. If it is a jailbroken tablet, that gives inmates access to all these other places.
Can you tell me just really quickly that this term, I've never heard of, jailbreaking a tablet, is that somehow getting out of the intranet and onto the wild, wild internet?
Yes, it is. And I think it's fair to start by saying the majority of people inside actually use tablets responsibly and for what they are intended for educational purposes, communication. But a small majority with nefarious intentions, yes, you can jailbreak a tablet and then use it to get onto the internet. But it's a responsibility of these private services that make millions of dollars every month off of us or off of incarcerated people. It's a responsibility to find ways to restrict the amount of ways that people can do that, such as new software and
like it's all work in progress. They're flying the plane as they build it as well. Well, Bryan Moser, I'm very appreciative of your knowledge of this and then you sharing it with us. And I know you've paid your price, you paid your debt to society. So I wish you all the best in your journalism career as you forge ahead. Good luck to you, sir.
Thank you so much, Ashley. Thanks for having me.
I look forward to reading more of your pieces. That's Bryan Moser reporting from...
Of course, some people were leaving comments and wondering, they were confused. They were thinking, does that mean Bryan can go jump on Reddit and is he over here on Facebook and can he see this and see that? Not if everything is as secure as it's supposed to be, he can't. But just like as was discovered on Reddit, and we talked about in our previous video, when that little green light goes on next to Kohberger's name, if you're his contact, then you know he's online doing something. I don't know if the green light comes on when he's listening to music, when he's messaging someone, or when he's video visiting, but that is a long day to be able to talk to someone or do something from 7 a.m. to 11 p.m. Now, I know certain jails, certain inmates can only speak in 15-minute increments to people. I'm not sure if that time limit goes out the window when you're speaking about attorney-client privilege. But I am sure that Bryan Kohberger's lawyer, Ann Taylor, really appreciates not having to make that 83.7-mile drive from Coeur d'Alene, her office, all the way down to the Latah County Jail and back. That would take her 3 hours round trip. What kind of attorney has the time to drive that long and stay with their client for Lord knows how long speaking in the jail? But the major thing we found out with Ashley Banfield's show is that Bryan Kohberger's attorney, Ann Taylor, met with the judge behind closed doors, or I don't know if it was a secret video visit or how they met, but the determination was made that there is no conflict of interest. Any types of worrisome conflicts of interest that Ann Taylor, the Kootenai County's public defender's office, may have had with Bryan Kohberger's case apparently have been cleared out, according to News Nation. That's because Attorney Taylor has previously represented at least 3 of the parents involved in the Idaho 4 victim's case.
But tonight I'm coming back with some more exclusive material on the Idaho murder, so I hope you will stay through the next ensuing moments. I think this is one of the most important issues that has come across the radar in the Idaho murder case, because I like criminal procedure. I've been, kind of steeped in it for a long time, and I cannot stand when something gets overturned on appeal. I can't stand it because sometimes it's so preventable, right? Especially if you know in advance and you do something about it. And I kind of see something percolating here. The experts know better, and they're having a field day arguing online about this. And so I know it's a really important issue. It has to do with conflict of interest. I know we've talked about it before, but I have some breaking news on this tonight. So the issue has been Bryan Kohberger's public defender, Ann Taylor, right? She showed up and then walked into court with him the very first time. She's a very accomplished attorney. Holy cow. She's got some real scores under her belt, right? So she's good. She's also a leader in the public defender's office. So looked like it was a pretty good match, especially for a case that was important as this. Could be a death penalty case. I'll repeat, could be a death penalty case. You have to have a star, but you have to have a clean star. Someone who has no conflicts in her past representations. And along came the fact that she had indeed represented the mother of Kara Kernodle, one of the alleged victims of Bryan Kohberger, her client, and then two other parents of the victims, right? So that all of a sudden, it's like, it seems so clear. Well, you cannot have represented the children of parents who are now going to be in that courtroom watching you defend their child's alleged killer. You can't. And yet there's some wiggle room. But with all of the conflagration that happened, it turns out now there has been a meeting. And we have sources close to the prosecution who have told us that Ann Taylor has had a meeting with the judge on this exact issue, the conflict of interest issue. Private meeting, behind closed doors, discussing all of the issues. Likely she was called in to lay out, tell me everything you did with client A, client B, and client C. Tell me everything so that we can exclude the possibility of a conflict. And in this review process, my sources told me that it's been clear. No conflict, according to the judge. So, is that it? I mean, Kara Northington, Ben Mogan, Corey Hattrock, all parents of the deceased victims in this case, all had Ann Taylor on their cases, right? So it is such a curious issue. What did she tell the judge? What did she lay out to the judge in order for the judge in this case to say, nothing to see here, no conflict problem? Did she see our interview? Did the judge see our interview with Ann Taylor's previous client, who she dropped on the very day she showed up in that courtroom with her brand new client, Bryan Kohberger? Literally dropped her former client, Kara Northington, that's Xana Kernodle's mom, dropped her that day. And they were still active, like it was still an active pending case. By the way, Kara Northington had no idea that this had gone on. She had no notification of it, she told us. And did Ann Taylor know about the interview that we conducted on this program with Xana's mom, in which she laid out that she was gobsmacked by all of this, that she had no idea? And then I think maybe most importantly, she felt betrayed.
We know we've seen Xana Kernodle's troubled mom, Kara Northington. She had drug charges filed against her on November 19th. There's been quite a bit of a history. So that was shortly after the huge Idaho 4 murders crime happened on November 13th. But Ann Taylor recused herself from Kara's case on January 5th, the same day that Bryan Kohberger made his first appearance in court. So that caused big controversies. There's a petition to get Attorney Taylor taken off Kohberger's case. One is called Ban Ann Taylor. Taylor from representing Bryan Kohberger due to conflict of interest. And with this new news of Taylor's salary bump, $200 an hour, coming out, some people are really on the bandwagon to get Taylor off the case. But I beg to differ, and my reasoning might be a little bit different than others, but I think in the end you'll see we all want the same thing. We want justice for the victims of the Idaho 4 crime. Per the Daily Mail, Ann Taylor is going to be making at least $416,000 per year based on this new income for the case, based on approximately a 40-hour work week. When it comes to billable hours, a lot of us might know that attorneys can work a lot longer than a 40-hour work week. Reading through these motions, creating motions, researching cases, so much paperwork. In this case, I can't imagine the huge amount of discovery. It would be so easy for Attorney Taylor to pull an 80-hour work week or a 100-hour work week. Latah County has agreed to give the funds to Kootenai County for Taylor's work, and any overtime hours, which I assume there will be plenty, will be paid directly to Attorney Taylor from Latah County. And there's also a second lawyer who is supporting Taylor in the case who will be paid $180 per hour. It might sound like a lot of money. Some people, it runs the gamut. Some people are thinking, whoa, this is outrageous. Some people totally understand. Banfield's main problem was that she had a problem with local taxpayers being kept out of the loop and motions being sealed, such as the motion of why Taylor no longer has a conflict of interest in this case.
But the other issue, before I get to number 2, the other issue is that you, my friends, and me, and the other folks involved in the case, we don't get to find out what was in the review process. I find that really weird. It's sealed. Apparently this meeting that happened behind closed doors with the judge and Ann Taylor, tell me your story, what's the review here, let's do the review process, tell me everything you know about these clients. All of that information is sealed tight. And we can't know what's in it as the public. And P.S., if you're in Idaho, hi, but you pay the price. Like, that's your taxpayer bill. You're paying those public officials. And P.S. also, in America, home of the brave and free, and my adopted home, I'm a citizen here, most pious among us. I love our system of jurisprudence. I love it because I have been to Iraq, and I have been to Iran, and I have been to Syria, and I've been to Afghanistan, and that system sucks. Ours is transparent. I love it. On occasion, it's not very transparent. And on some occasions, it's really not transparent. And so that's why I have an issue with this. And you can debate me all you want, and I welcome it. I'm happy with you saying that. I get it. Gag orders are important, but not when they're excessive. And then secrecy in the judges' chambers, I get a little antsy. I get agita with that as well.
News Nation also got the scoop, the inside scoop on someone close to Kohberger's case, that prosecutors are in support of Taylor being moved off the case. I'm sure they want her off the case, like attorney Mark Garagos told Ashley Banfield. Some people, I believe, might be worried that Ann Taylor is just too good. They're looking up her history. They're calling her formidable and very intelligent. I'm sure she will present a great case. And that's one reason I want her kept on the case.
Yeah, okay, wait one sec, because I'm going to get you to talk about this one. So the sources that we have close to the prosecution have also told us that the prosecutors in this case are actually in favor of having her conflicted out. And I suppose I get that, because who wants to try a case twice? Who wants to do all that work and all those billable hours to the taxpayers of Idaho, and then, a couple of years down the pike, after they might get a conviction, have it tossed out only to start all over again and put those families all through that again?
Well, look, the cynic in me would say, of course they want her out. She's one of the only qualified defenders in Idaho, so I can see that. But at the same time, the prosecutors have a very, I would say, easy way to raise this issue, which is to file the motion to say that they want the waivers by the respective clients. There's a U.S. Supreme Court case, I believe it's Wood, that specifically talks about what you have to do in a situation where there is a conflict. It has to be on the record. I don't know if that, and we don't know if that was done already in camera or ex parte. Remember, there's two different ways this can be done. It can be done in camera, which means the public doesn't listen to it, and it can be done ex parte, which means the prosecutor doesn't get in on this. Or it could be a hybrid of the two. But I would be shocked if the prosecutor hasn't at least filed the motion, maybe redacting what they think or what they think they know. But I'm surprised that so far, and I haven't checked the docket, maybe it's been done, that they haven't filed for this, because the U.S. Supreme Court generally counsels that you do this.
Yeah, well, there's all these filings that we found, and they're all sealed. So, the public doesn't get to be a part of the transparent process.
Now, I know there's controversy about Ashley Banfield interviewing Xana's mom, Kara. I believe it's good to have Kara's voice out there. Obviously, Kara has struggled with substance abuse issues, and certain things will come out. Kara spoke of Ann Taylor being her power of attorney, of not being informed when Ann Taylor was removed from her case. I like that Attorney Garagos challenged that notion. Now, maybe Kara's correct. Maybe she really received no notifications whatsoever. But Attorney Garagos did state that he believed perhaps Kara may have missed some court dates. And that is how defendants find out oftentimes the status of their case. So if a person doesn't show up in court when they're supposed to, it stands to reason that they may miss updates. And that might not be their attorney's fault. I'm sure every attorney wants their client in court in front of a judge when they're supposed to be there.
If you miss that day, if you miss that exclusive reporting on this program on that day that Xana's mom told us these things, I want to replay that moment for you because it's critical, and I'll tell you why right after you hear it. Take a look.
I'm heartbroken. I'm heartbroken because I trusted her. She pretended that she was wanting to help me, and to find that out that she's representing him, I can't even convey how betrayed I feel.
The reason I play that is because the fact that she says she's betrayed, heartbroken, we went on to say, would you consider signing a waiver to allow this to happen? Because sometimes you can do that, right? You can sign a waiver and allow that public defender to go ahead and move on to the next client that might be a conflict. She is not going to do that. She said it clear as day. I ain't doing that. I'm upset. I'm betrayed. This was her power of attorney, she said. Ann Taylor was her power of attorney to get her into rehab. She said, I don't know what to do now. I'm lost. I don't even know what the next step is. So clearly, that is an infraction of one area of Idaho law where if you're going to take on a conflicted client, you have to make sure that the prior client is okay with it. That's not the case. You just heard it. So there's number one. Number two, you're going to hear in a minute. I want to play this for our audience in case they missed this other part. This is part two of that critical issue in Idaho code where, if there's a conflicted issue, a few things have to be met. I think this is part two that wasn't met. This is the part where you have to notify the client before you drop them. So here is Kara Kernodle telling us if that happened when we had that exclusive interview with you. I'm going to ask if we can roll that part of the interview so we can see it and hear it from her mouth. Take a look. Have you had a chance to speak with her about this?
No, I spoken with her. I found out through a friend who found it on Reddit. So,
you found out through a friend through social media. You weren't notified by Ann Taylor, your attorney herself?
Right now.
Well, that is pretty clear. My sources say that apparently the fact that this interview is out there, it's been on television, it's been out online, it is as easy as a quick Google. It has not been consumed by those in the process, Mark Garagos, and I'm not going to suggest that they should be watching Banfield every night, but for Pete's sake, if the person at the center of the conflict issue has spoken publicly, and that's available with a few keystrokes, it's a bit shocking. And I'm trying to figure out, what do you think Ann Taylor said in this meeting with the judge in order to clear the review process? What possibly could she have put forth that would have given her the all clear to continue?
Well, let me engage in some rank speculation. Number one, I believe, and once again, we could check the docket to see that this woman that you interviewed had missed several of her court appearances. If that is true, then there's an issue there. If Ann Taylor had said to the judge, look, my office or those working for me on the panel are the ones who had communications, that this client didn't have any communications with me of any substantive nature whatsoever, let alone anything about their kids. And I had talked to my current client, and he has no problem with me representing him. And they then get a waiver from the current client. And there is some representation, either as an officer of the court or under penalty of perjury, that nothing was ever discussed with Ann Taylor directly with the client, and just an underling. Maybe then that's what they've compartmentalized. You will remember, however, Ashley, that when you and I talked about this, when you first discovered this and broadcast it, we discussed it, and we said there had to be a hearing. You cannot just go on your merry way, whether you watch Banfield or not. There has to be a hearing.
Yeah. So the other thing is, Geragos, I have always been told, and it has served me well, that if you send an email with something important in it that needs action, don't assume that if you don't check on it, it will be done. We can all send things out, right? We can just send at will, but not following up is a problem. And knowing that Kara Kernodle has these addiction issues, and God bless her, she's just been, plagued with these problems in her life and is trying so hard, to get clean. Wouldn't you think that's important if you're her power of attorney, that you actually make contact? Don't just send it out into the abyss. Make the contact with a delicate client like Kara Kernodle to let her know this is happening. This isn't just any client you're taking on. This is the alleged killer of her daughter. It just seems to me, and my PS, with all of that in mind, why is this sealed, Geragos? Why would they seal the reasons as to why there's no conflict in the judge's eye?
Because the sealing does not bother me in this sense. If it's sealing as to the communications to attorney-client, and I can understand that. If it's sealing as to work product, and specifically work product explaining why there is no conflict, I understand all that. And in terms of communicating with somebody who's got addiction problems, wow, you know as well as I do, it's almost 80 to 90% of people who get processed through the criminal justice system have either mental health or addiction issues. I mean, that's the criminal justice system in America, unfortunately, is basically our mental health system.
That's a fair point. Okay.
So we don't know all the details there, but I don't agree with Ann Taylor being moved off of Bryan's case. If it's true there's no conflict of interest, if she really is as good as the reputation that precedes her, you want Kohberger to have the best, because you don't want him to get convicted and then all of a sudden, ineffective counsel, stuff is flipped. No, I want him to have that best, that dream team, so no one can say, foul play, this went wrong, that went wrong, that went wrong. I want Kohberger to have the best defense. I want the prosecutors to put on their best case. And I want a jury to decide by a preponderance of the evidence that, okay, if they see and line up all this evidence that we don't know about, and the jury, or if it's a bench trial for the judge, if it's decided, yeah, this guy is guilty, then I want it a nice clean conviction where Bryan can go on and spend the rest of his days in prison or go to death row and expire, whatever is correct. That's why I want Ann Taylor staying on this case. You want the best going up against the best and no issues with ineffective counsel. So we don't know what really happened with Ann Taylor and Xana's mom, and if there was a waiver that will be signed, how the parents agree. I don't know all the parents' viewpoints on what they think should happen with Ann Taylor. But I know I don't have a problem with Ann Taylor's salary. I think people should be paid to do a job. Doctors, teachers, don't we wish teachers made as much as doctors and lawyers? but I think people should be paid handsomely for a job well done. I don't necessarily balk at this defense attorney making $200 an hour, because I have a friend who's an IP attorney. You know, you get an idea of how much billable hours they can book. I know another person really smart as a whip, criminal defense attorney. Retainers might be $5,000, $10,000, $8,500, what have you. Pray to God I never need them, but I see the difference that a good attorney can make in the lives of people who don't have great attorneys. It's great to have an attorney who shows up. In the case of this one person I know, which I might cover this case in the future, 3 different defendants. I believe only 2 of them had private counsel. One had a public defender, but the one who had the person I know as a criminal defense attorney was the first one, I believe, to go in there, strike a deal, plead guilty, and got a 1-year probation. Now that's the difference, as opposed to these other 2 likely going up to trial. Who knows how much time they'll get, if they'll get hard time, and people should get what they deserve, but lawyering and figuring out the justice system, unfortunately, isn't always about pure justice. Sometimes it's just about plea deals and who can go in there first and who can snitch and tell the truth and get the best deal. And great attorneys know how to play that game. And the best attorneys are pretty much actors. They know how to present a case in court. And we'll see how Ann Taylor presents her case, if it comes to that, in a big public trial for Bryan Kohberger, and hopefully the prosecution will be just as formidable. You want a fair match and you want the truth to win out.
Institutional knowledge, and they do know the local culture. And I can't say enough good things about the public indigent defense in this country. They don't get paid enough, and they're not budgeted enough.
I agree. And I'll say one more soapboxy thing that I often say. I always say, do jury duty. Don't you dare try to get out of it. It's the least you can do while people are serving with a gun overseas to protect you. You could serve that way with sushi and a latte at lunch. But my other soapbox thing is that public defenders are some of the best lawyers in this country. They are so skilled. They are so practiced. They have phenomenal muscle memory. They don't get the credit they deserve. So there, I'm done. But Mark, thank you, as always. Love having you. You'll come back, right?
As always, love seeing you, Ashley, and I'll be back whenever you'll have me.
And he comes for free, which is so wonderful. Thank you, Mark Aragos. I appreciate it.
Now, on Ashley's show, set to air tonight, Friday, February 17th, she's going to delve further into these GTL tablets, these Inmate tablets, and how other famous criminals have used theirs. People like Chris Watts, Lori Vallow, and others.
Now, if you think that Bryan Kohberger's communication privileges are shocking, I want you to see which other alleged or convicted killers, what they've got access to in terms of the tablet used throughout the day. We're actually going to do a deep dive on the accounts for Lori Vallow, Scott Peterson, Brian Walsh, Joey Arias, Alex Murdoch, Chris Watts, and even Jahar Tsarnaev, including the flood of money that people have been pouring into their commissary accounts. That is tomorrow, so don't miss it.
Visit the links below to watch all of News Nation. I really like Ashley Banfield. Again, she probably has a big fan base like Nancy Grace. Some people just have horrible things to say about her, and I don't understand why. I think for the most part, journalists are trying to do the best job they can. Some people speak about Trent Bolt, that guy who came out and claimed he had this big affair with Chris Watts. He even produced evidence, faked text message exchanges between him and Chris Watts. This guy went so far as to waste the time of the CBI and local police and everyone. They went on these really long interviews. This guy didn't care. Now, I have my own ideas about who might have prompted or even paid Trent Bolt to lie. We won't talk about that. But there are people whose job it is to really mislead the public and mislead journalists. Even if you believe you're doing your due diligence, you get these alleged text messages from a Trent Bolt type guy claiming this big affair with Chris Watts. Trent wasn't even afraid to go lie to police, which could have been, he could have gotten in trouble for a false report. Wasting their time, police flying out to different states to speak with his mom, to speak with this other man. Hours and hours and hours and hours of wasted time that investigators could have used to investigate real tips and clues. My point is, yes, some people think, oh my goodness, Ashley Banfield fell for that. But the problem is some people are out there intentionally trying to shift the narrative of the media. So that's why I don't fault her for that, and I don't fault her for conducting interviews. I like to get as many details and as many facts as we can in these cases we follow. Malachi 4:2. But for you who fear my name, the Son of Righteousness will rise with healing in his wings. I love that part. And you will go free, leaping with joy, like calves let out to pasture. Stay tuned for updates on the Kohberger case, other cases. I'm really following the Nicola Bully case so closely, and I guess I'm just waiting for that moment to figure out what happened, to put a video all together. Who knows when we'll have an answer. I'm praying she's found at some point soon. I feel so much for her two young girls. But stay tuned for that. I plan to put a video together about that too, and many other cases going on. Thanks for watching.